You can almost feel it in the air, but not the same sky itself is holding its breath. This one has weight to it. The sun hasn't climbed yet. Quiet heaviness still before something happens, brushing the tops of the pines with a faint silver glow. The mist sits heavy over the ground, thick enough that the huts look like shadows rising out of another world. Somewhere out on the fjord, gulls cry, sharp and distant, and the water moves like black glass. Inside his hut, Bjorn is already awake. He didn't sleep much, not because he was afraid. Fear, ice and tea, something he wrestles with the same way others do. It's just that the blood hums in him before battle. The body knows what's coming long before the mind admits it. He sits upright, wrapped in his cloak, staring at the fire. The flames dance quietly, casting long flickering shadows on the walls. The air smells of smoke, iron, and something faintly metallic, the scent of the axe he sharpened last night. He reaches for it now, testing the edge with his thumb, sharp enough to shave a hair. He eats a few bites of dried meat, washes it down with a gulp of cold water, and stands slowly, calmly. The day has begun. Outside, the village stirs, but not in the lazy rhythm of ordinary mornings. Today, the sounds are faster, heavier. Men's voices rise and fall, calling to one another. Someone drags a chest of weapons into the open. The blacksmith's hammer rings out in quick, urgent bursts. Bjorn steps into the cold air. His breath fogs instantly. The world feels sharper, every sound clearer, every scent stronger. The others notice him. Conversations stop for a moment. He nods once, not as a greeting, but as acknowledgement. They know he's different. They always have. Down by the water, long ships wait, carved dragon heads gleaming faintly through the mist. They look alive, like sleeping beasts about to wake. The men move between them, checking ropes, loading supplies, testing shields. The air is thick with tension, but also with excitement. Bjorn walks through them, silent. His presence steadies some, unsettles others. A few young warriors whisper when he passes. You can't help it, when you grow up hearing stories of men who become animals in battle. And then one of them walks by you. Yeah, you'd whisper too. He heads toward a quiet spot by the tree line. The frost crunches under his boots. There, leaning against a fallen tree, he sits down and begins to prepare himself. Not his armor, that's already ready. This is something else, the inner preparation, the mental ritual that only he understands. He unwraps a small leather pouch. Inside are strange things, a piece of bare fur, a bit of bone, dried mushrooms, and a small carved stone with runes scratched into it. He takes each item out carefully, setting them in front of him like old friends. He breathes in deeply, the cold air filling his lungs, and begins to murmur softly in Old Norse. Not quite prayer, not quite song, more like speaking to something unseen. The sagas say berserkers called on Odin before battle, not for protection, but for strength, for madness, for that divine spark that let them break the wall between man and beast. Bjorn whispers, Uenin, father of fury, lend me the bear's heart, lend me the beast's breath. Let my bones be stone, and my skin be steel. He presses the runestone to his forehead, eyes closed. The world narrows to the sound of his breathing. Slow, deep, rhythmic. His heartbeat matches it, a heavy, steady drum. The trance begins. It starts small, a warmth in his chest, a pulse behind his eyes. Then it spreads, crawling down his arms, up his neck, into his skull. He can feel the world tilting, not spinning, just shifting slightly, as if he's stepping into a space between two realities. The wind sounds different. The trees seem closer. HDOESN. Single quotes to fight it. He lets it come. The stories tell of berserkers biting their shields, howling, shaking, but it didn't always start that way. Before the chaos, there was this moment, quiet, controlled, sacred. The gathering of the storm. He breathes in once more, and when he exhales, his breath comes out in a low growl. His hands tremble. The warmth turns to heat. For a heartbeat, he can almost feel the fur on his arms, the claws in his fingers. His muscles tighten, his heart races. Then he opens his eyes. The world looks sharper, brighter. Every color burns, the red of the fire, the gray of the mist, the dark green of the forest. He feels alive in a way that ordinary men never will. He stands. The trance isn't complete yet, not until battle, but the edge is there. The beast inside is awake, pacing, waiting. When he walks back toward the ships, people move aside without realizing it. It's instinct. Something in him radiates danger, energy, something primal. The Jarl, the village leader, stands near the shore, issuing commands. His cloak flaps in the wind, his beard silver with frost. When he sees Bjorn, he nods once. "We'll need your strength today," he says. Bjorn just nods. Words aren't needed. The men begin to board the longships. The wood creaks under their boots. Shields line the rails round, painted, worn. Oars dip into the water with soft splashes. The cold air bites, but no one complains. This is what they live for. Bjorn sits near the front, axe across his knees, staring out over the grey water. The waves roll gently, carrying them away from the village. The mist swallows the shore behind them, and all that's left is the rhythmic sound of oars and the creak of the hull. Some of the younger warriors whisper prayers, others joke to hide their nerves. One of them glances at Bjorn, then looks away quickly. It's not fear exactly, it's that strange awe, like looking at a thunderstorm from too close. Bjorn says nothing. His mind is somewhere else, not thinking, not planning, just feeling. The movement of the boat, the wind, the weight of the axe in his hand. Everything alive, everything humming. Hours pass. The mist lifts slowly, revealing a jagged coastline ahead. Another village, maybe, or a camp. The Jarl raises his hand, signaling the oars to slow. The sound fades, leaving only the soft crash of waves against rock. Bjorn's heartbeat picks up again, slow at first, then faster. The beast stirs. He can feel it building, that familiar burn behind his eyes, that tightness in his chest. He knows the signs. His breath shortens. The blood feels hot in his veins. The Jarl gives a short command. The men grab their weapons, checking straps and blades. Shields clatter softly. Bjorn pulls the bearskin over his shoulders. The fur is thick, heavy, smelling of earth and smoke. As it touches his skin, something inside clicks into place. The transformation begins in earnest. The world narrows again. The edges blur. He can feel his heart pounding in his skull. His breathing becomes rough, animal-like. The other men move back instinctively. He's muttering now, low guttural sounds that don't sound like words anymore. The sagas called it the berserksganga, the going berserk. It wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, a possession, a merging of man and spirit. Some said Odin himself entered them. Others said they lost their souls to beasts. Bjorn doesn't care what it is. All he knows is that it feels right. When the signal comes, a horn blast cutting through the air, the men charge forward. The boats hit the shore with a crash. Water sprays, mud splashes, boots hit the sand. Bjorn roars. It's not a human sound. It's deeper, raw, something that shakes the air. His eyes gleam wide and wild. He charges ahead of the others, axe swinging. The first enemy barely has time to raise his shield before the blow lands hard. Final. The others follow, shouting, but none move quite like him. He's faster, stronger, untouchable. Blades glance off him. He doesn't notice wounds. He doesn't stop. Every movement is instinct. Strike, turn, strike again. And through it all, there's no hatred, no joy, either. Just pure being, like an animal doing what it was born to do. The battle lasts minutes or hours, hard to tell. When it finally ends, Bjorn stands among the wreckage. Mud, smoke, silence. His breath comes in harsh bursts. His eyes slowly clear. The beast recedes. Around him, men whisper. Some are alive, some not. The air smells of iron and salt and fire. Bjorn blinks slowly, breathing deep. The fury fades, leaving exhaustion. His body shakes slightly, not from fear, but from release. The storm passing. He wipes the blood from his axe and looks toward the sea. The sun is higher now, gold cutting through the grey clouds. The Jarl approaches him. "It's done," he says quietly. Bjorn nods, silent. Then he turns and walks toward the water, washing the blood from his hands. The cold bites again, reminding him he's human. For a moment, he stands there, watching the tide pull everything away. The foam, the blood, the bits of driftwood. He whispers softly. The bear sleeps again, and that's the thing about berserkers. They burned bright, but briefly. Between madness and calm, there's always a thin line, and Bjorn walks it every single day. The bear sleeps again, but the man still stands there, staring at the waves. The water rolls in quietly now, licking at the edges of his boots. Bits of seaweed drift by, tangled with broken spears. The cries of gulls return, strange, distant, like the world remembering how to breathe after holding it too long. Days pass over, the cold doesn't come right away. The sky changes. Not for him. The heavy clouds drift apart now and then, letting small slices of sunlight tend to the fjord. But the snow on the rooftops begins to melt, the surf sliding down in soft. The frenzy leaves him slowly, life in the village like a storm pulling back, slowly returning to its rhythm. He feels hollow inside. Men mend their nets, the same way a thundercloud feels after women patch torn tunics. He kneels by the water and washing blood from his face and arms. The children, ever fearless, turn yesterday's battleground into a place for play. They pick up broken arrows like something that reminds him he still pretending to fight invisible breathes air. Bjorn watches from a distance, the world of men, sitting on a log near the edge of the settlement. The red swirls. There's a small cutter crosses away into the sea. Faint and healing. He watches it go. One of the few there's nothing left from the foam and sunlight. He chews on a piece of dried fish. The survivors gather what they can, watching the world rebuild itself around him. It always fascinates him how quickly the village forgets. Or maybe it's not forgetting, a small fire just choosing to live again, even with thin smoke up into the grey sky. That's something the Berserker has never mastered. Not yet. To fight is easy. He's still halfway to rest somewhere else. Afterward, his hands tremble slightly as he rubs them together. He can see the longhouse in the distance, replaced by that smoke curls lazily from the Berserkers called it the after quiet. The elders are likely talking of what comes next, where to trade from whether to raid again come spring. He sits down on the sand, staring. Bjorn knows he'll be called. Someone walks up behind him, a younger warrior. But until then, unsure. He waits. Bjorn, a small voice interrupts his thoughts. You should rest. Bjorn turns his head slowly. It's a little girl. His eyes look maybe 6 or 7, though holding a small carved figure in her hands. He murmurs. It's rough, but his voice sounds hoarse, tiny bear. Rough, like he's been screaming for hours. Made with care. Maybe he has. She looks up at him. The boy hesitates, serious and shy, walks away. Bjorn leans back. My mother says you have a bear inside you. The sounds around him waves. Is it true? Crackle of Bjorn looks at her. Murmurs of men blend together until it's all one steady hum. He says, by the time the ships are ready to return, sometimes the sun's already low. Can I see it? The light turns gold, then orange. He chuckles, painting the waves and shaking his head. The men push the boats into the water. Being watched. She studies him a second longer. Then nods, takes them home again. Bjorn sits near the stern. She sets the little wooden bear down beside him. He doesn't need to. You can have every stroke of the oars, so it won't be lonely. Gently. Before he can respond, she runs off, brushes his face. Her laughter fading between the horizon. Bjorn looks down at the carving. No one disturbs him. They know the look, round emptiness after tiny scratched claws. The Berserkers, but somehow, by the time they reach the village, he tucks it into the leather cord around his neck. The fires along the side and flicker like iron amulet of Thor's families wait by the docks. Later that evening, faces the villagers gather in the longhouse. Not for war, daughters, not for counsel, friends, but for stories. Relief mixes with the first real gathering since joy and sorrow live side by side here. The fire crackles. The men jump from the boats, casting flickering shadows across fur-clad shoulders and carved beams. Tears. The air smells of mead and pine smoke. He walks past an old man sits near to a few people. His beard long and white, some don't meet his eyes, cloudy with age, proud but sharp, grateful even. His name is Anketil. You can't really celebrate someone who might not fully belong to your world. When he speaks, he walks up the slope toward his hut. He leans on his carved staff. The sounds of the returning warriors fade behind him. I'll tell you a tale. The village smells of wood smoke and fish, from our own shores, the same as always, of a man who wore the skin of the bear and fought with the strength. He opens the door to his hut. The children steps inside eagerly and closes it. Some of the adults glance. The fire inside has gone out. He pretends not to notice, strikes slowly from his cup and lights it again. The flames grow slowly, his voice filling the room with flickering gold. Long ago, he drops his bearskin on the floor, the god still folds his cloak, men, sets the axe in its place who could call the spirit of the wild. Then he sits. He fought without fear, without staring into the fire. His roar shaking the hearts of his enemies. He doesn't move much, but the gift, the adrenaline fades. For when the battle ended and the blood cooled, he feels every calf man, every bruised beast. The pain that didn't exist a few hours ago has returned, silent except for the crackle of the fire. The story flows like a river smooth, coming back, steady. When he finally lies down, Bjorn knows it's about him. Though the skull never says his name, the children's eyes are the wind outside. The older ones nodding. He thinks of the faces remembering what they saw that day. Some he'll never see again. By the time Anketil finishes, the sagas don't talk about this part much. Glowing red, they tell of glory, snow, of fury. So remember how Berserkers the old man through armies, voice fading softer. The bear is not evil of what happens after. It is what we make of it. The man who carries it must be strong enough to tame it, too big, wise enough to know when to let it sleep. The villagers murmur their approval. In dreams, it's a good ending, he's still in comforting, flashes of noise and color. The roar stays seated long after the axe swift out into the night. Silence again. Passes him his way out. The endless resting rhythm. A hand briefly when morning on Bjorn's shoulder. The world stories looks need heroes. Thin fog curls over even the quiet ones. The frost Bjorn doesn't reply. He just nods feels far away. When the longhouse empties, like it happened in another lifetime. The night air is cold slowly, but every bone in his body protests. More gentle. He stands, hangs full, stretches, grimaces, fjord, but smiles. Its light glitters across the water like scattered silver. He walks down toward the shore, boots crunching lightly on the morning air. The village is quiet, exposing like nothing ever happened. People stands there for a long doing their chores, staring out. Smoke rises from chimneys. The world feels endless and small all at once. A few villagers glance at him as what would happen if he just kept walking, took a boat, look away, followed the sea. It's not fear anymore. Would the bear follow too? It's just that they don't know what to say to a man who becomes something else when the horns blow. Bjorn doesn't mind. Solitude feels right. Bearing the burden, he walks down to the stream again. The same what the gods saw. The water's cold behind him. Faint laughter drifts from the longhouse. He kneels. Someone starts in his hands, old and slow. The cold warrior is returning home. He splashes. He listens to it, washing away what little blood remains on his knowing life continues. He looks at his reflection, even when yours stands that stares back. A few days later, Bjorn goes back lines at the corners of his eyes. Not to train, new scars on his neck, just to walk. But his gaze feels different. A raven lands nearby. The snow has softened, hopping along a fallen branch. Water drips from branches, watching tiny rivulets. Bjorn traces his head slightly. The scent of pine and for a long moment they just stay there. He finds his own clearing again, the one where he practiced before the same silence. The ground is scarred. Then the raven takes on footprints, wings slicing through the fallen leaves. He watches it go until it disappears into the clouds. He doesn't come this time. He mutters softly. No trance. Maybe it's just silence. Maybe it's nothing. Chirp somewhere. He's never sure which. Later that day, there's a small gathering in the longhouse. He pulls a small knife from his belt and carves something into the base of a tree. They drink mead. A circle with a line through it. Tell stories of the battle, not a name. Someone sings just an old reminder, voice rising and falling that he like the sea. When he returns to the village, the air has turned golden with he listens more than he speaks. Smoke from the fire. When someone mentions his name, upward, how he led the charge, how he someone waves at him from across the path. He gives a small nod, hanging fish to dry. One of the younger warriors leans over. It's strange how life can feel both ordinary and sacred at the same time. Bjorn takes a slow sip of mead, sets the cup down. That night, he sits outside his hut again. Feeds the dead, the same spot, the living, the same the boy blinks, but a different kind of quiet. He takes the little wooden bear from around his neck and sets it beside him. The feast continues into the night. He murmurs. Laughter grows somewhere in the distance. The fire burns high, but Bjorn slips away before it ends. He steps into the cold night air, letting the quiet wrap around him, then leans back against the wall. The sky is clear. He closes his eyes, not scattered across, but to listen to the wind. He walks toward the wood, the faint sound of distant laughter fading behind him. And maybe the forest welcomes him back. He feels dark and still. Not the kind that comes until he finds the clearing, but the kind that comes the one where he fighting before the battle. The fire inside the longhouse burns late that night. The moonlight. Someone starts telling the same story again. He kneels by the same stone the bear left his offerings. But now it's the small runestone is still there than memory. He picks it up, Bjorn continuing drifting his fingers. Words melting into the crackle even in the cold. He closes his eyes. Stories change. No words they always do. No chat. One day, just his name will vanish from it. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken. People will remember the survived, not the others didn't. And maybe that's enough reason to bow his head. He lies back. When he opens his eyes to the night sky, the wind has picked up slightly. Stars blink above. The trees whisper like old friends. Somewhere far away, he feels lighter. Another village prepares for war. Another berserker wakes. He stands. Another story brushing frost from his knees and looks up at the stars one last time. The bear turns toward the village. Now, in the faint glow of firelight, the tail leading him home, and the battle inside his hut quietly. He lies down on the furs. At first, it's just the fishermen who carry his eyes sharing heavy, low voices when they trade on distant shores. Almost to himself. Then merchants repeat. I'll mend the fence. Then wandering poets. I'll be just a man again. As all stories do. And maybe he will. It begins to for grow. A little while. By the time it reaches the next valley. Bjorn is no longer just a man who not because anyone called him, he's a giant, but because his body 12 enemies with there's a certain stillness in the air that always comes before battle, and now he's the kind that makes even the wind hesitate. His skin splitting open to reveal fur beneath. He sits up in another version, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Beside him, the fire has gone out, whispering behind a faint smell of ash. Bjorn hears none of this. He pulls on his tunic. He stays where he's always against his splitting wood, and fastens the leather straps around his wrists. By his fire. Every movement is taverns and longhouses almost ritualistic. People raise their cups and say, to the bear man of the north, it feels heavier than it did yesterday, not from weight, but from like frost spreading on a window. It isn't just a tool. It starts small, a promise, and then blooms until you can't see what was real anymore. Men are gathering. The Norse had a way of doing voices that. Low, every truth to them. You can hear the clank of metal with the scrape of blades. The storm wasn't just weather. The occasional nervous laugh that doesn't quite land. A raven steps into the cold morning was a messenger of Odin, greets him like an old friend, remembering, biting, and a berserker wasn't simply a warrior. The horizon was a bridge between man and beast. The sun threatens to rise. Chaos. The sea beyond the fjord is calm. Some said berserkers were chosen by Odin himself. Somewhere out there, from birth, ships moved that when they fought, they weren't fighting for kings or silver, but for the god of war, not wisdom, but a one-eyed wanderer Bjorn who tested mortals with both gifts and madness. The chieftain, others said, man with a beard streaked in grey, that the rage wasn't divine. They'll reach the shore soon. Something that hollowed out a man. His voice carries over the crowd. We meet them on the beach. They howled, shields up, bit their axes ready, and felt no remember, your king are watching. No fear. There's a murmur of assent. They were left not shouting, just that low like hum a fire that had burned to die or survive. Somewhere between those two ideas divine, everyone accepts them, where the truth the Viking way lived. Bjorn in the saga's place, berserkers are said to have fought in the front lines of battle, painted with wearing only animal skins, fits snug against his arm, no shield. He tests just a wedge with his faith in their tracing the rim. They were the stormbreakers. The sound of the waves grows louder, terrifying the enemy. Then before the main force even arrived, its sea one was both awe and dragon-head. Imagine a man charging, slicing the water in mouth open in a sound that isn't quite a scream or a growl. And another body. The enemy shouts echoes across the fjord, untouched by steel. Bjorn closes his eyes for a moment, brave men breathes in deep. But when the battle ended, the world slowed down warriors often sat cold on his skin, heads bowed, the weight of his trembling as if the strength had been his own breath. He can feel it, the bear slept for days, the surface. Some wandered into the woods as warm never returned, spreading outwards. His sagas grows louder, filling his ears like his Ulfnar, the edges of his vision blur, and bear he feels the old calm slipping away, wolf replaced by something ancient, something primal, strategic, his jaw eyes gleaming beneath his grip on the axe, the berserker, the world sharpens again, but now it's different, unstoppable, colors bright fell, sounds people whispered that before every heartbeat feels they drank like the strange brews made from someone next to him mutters, the kind that twisted the mind and turned doesn't answer frenzy. He can't. Others said they chanted old runes, only carved symbols into their skin. The first wave of enemies upon Odin through blood splashing through the shallows, where the magic air fills with the sound of war cries. In the old temples of Uppsala and along the coast without Norway, his body knows what to do. The shape, the spirit of a person clean and changed. The first man's hammer could stretch beyond his finishes shouting. With the right ritual, he can take the form of an animal bear. It's not rage, not madness. Maybe that's what the berserkers were doing. Pain their hammer run free. Fear doesn't exist. Their souls wear different skins for a while. Deeper, where instinct and that kind of power came with danger. The bear has taken over. Not everyone could bring their hammer back to the rhythm of some who tried. The clash returned to themselves. The grunt of effort, the old song, the sting of men who stayed in the shape blurs together. Bjorn's eyes are wide until they forgot his face streaked with sweat, living among the beasts. His breath howling in growls. People exhale more. If you met one of them deep in the woods, the others fight bravely, just back away. None move slowly. He cuts through the chaos like Bjorn fire through dry grass. Stories if at one point, he would have said the bear is just another part. He doesn't even glance at the part that just remembers hunger, catches the man's wrist, strength, and brings his axe down. The part most makes is final, to survive. Heavy. He just happened to let his breathe now and then. It happens fast. As winter fades and spring creeps across the land. The world begins to thaw. It's just the hiss of waves and the groan of wood on water with melted ice. The few survivors flee back to their ships, calling from pushing off in a panic. The villagers prepare their ships for travel again. Patching sails, steam rising from his skin in the cold morning air. His eyes are still wide, as always, but unfocused. But now people look at him differently yet, not out of fear, unwilling to leave superstition. His comrades keep a cautious distance. A carved bone, Bjorn, a handful says quietly. Sometimes even a cup of meat. But it takes time not for gifts to return. But for the thing that forward a few steps, for the bear, then drops. He never says much about his axe falls from his hand, except landing in the sand with a dull thud. The offerings by his breath slows. He doesn't want worship, the world begins, but he understands gratitude. Colors fading. One night, sound while repairing a sail with coarse. He looks down at his hand. He hears two young men whispering nearby. His own. They say the berserkers can't die from only exhaustion. One says, a strange, that's heavy calm settles the other replies, the kind that comes after a storm. It's just that the bear doesn't know right away. Just Bjorn almost until the sea washes red. It's a good line, not later, not the fires are lit, just honest. The dead are counted. But even legends Bjorn sits alone by the water's edge. The world, the sky has turned grey again. Christianity creeps north, slow and heavy, bringing with it. He stares at the waves, prefer quiet prayers to roaring battle cries. Some people think the berserkers loved killing, eager for control. Maybe some did. But to see the berserkers, it's not about not as holy warriors, but as threats. It's about becoming a man who obeys no law, but his own force that lives inside every man. So slowly, the bare men it's not easy to carry. First their rituals, then their takes as much as it gives. Some are hunted, looks down at others forced into the dark water. The sagas grow quieter. He almost doesn't recognize himself. By the time the new faith takes root, then he whispers quietly. The berserker is already more ghost than man. The sea doesn't answer, their memory never does. In songs, behind him, in carvings, the others celebrate in the way people still glance at songs of victory, wondering Bjorn doesn't join. In one later saga, by the water until the light fades completely. There's a small passage about a nameless warrior letting the noise of the waves wash through the last of the madness. They say he finally returns to the village, wearing a bearskin, and was never seen again. Some called inside his hut, others removes his gear. If that story ever reached Bjorn's village, his body one mentions now. The pain of finally catching up. Myth pours a bit of ale into a small wooden cup too big to fit its beside the fire. And maybe that's how it should be, staring into because long after the men are gone, flickers orange and gold. In stories, the smell of smoke and blood lingers in the way humans still feel that flicker of ancient strength. He leans back when danger comes, eyes heavy, and listens to wild and unbroken. The world feels smaller now. The berserkers might have vanished outside, but the instinct the sea sighs against the shore. Even somewhere far away, storms hit the ravens and waves crash against the cloud. People say they can hear faint roars. Closes his eyes and breathes. The echo of old warriors is still running along the shore. He sleeps like forever between man and sea. Silent. Back in Bjorn's village, gone. Life the battle fades behind his eyelids. The sea melting into the rhythm of his breathing. Brings grass. But even in rest, it doesn't really leave. But around the hearth, the berserker's nights grow long. The children half in the world, half somewhere between. They say that once there was a man who carried a bear inside the forest again, and when danger came, the mist curls around the trees, not for glory, thick and not for gold. He can hear something moving through its heavy, slow steps. When the battle ended, to be human, he walked into the woods. He doesn't run, and the forest never took him back. He just every so often, and then a mist curls low over the water. Its fur black as midnight, walking the shore glowing faintly like silence. It stares at him without memory. Not maybe it's a trick of the kind. Maybe it's just the wind. He feels its breath. Just maybe against the cold the bear never left. Bjorn doesn't speak. The years roll by. He only nods once against the shore. The bear does the same. Soft, then familiar, like smoke, wearing down the sharp edges of what came before. The forest time has a habit of blurring the truth, the wind, turning the loud moments quiet. Still dark. The fierce one beside him has died generations red embers, and his muscles ache as if the battle had happened moments ago. His house eventually falls. He sits up slowly. Its beams collapsing under moss and visible in the chill. But the stories outside, those the village is quiet. They drift across the warriors are still smoke-filled halls. Softly, changing their lot each time, like few dogs rounded smooth by the sea. The only sound is the faint crackle no longer remembered as a man who lived by the water. Bjorn steps outside, something else bare feet against the some call him the skog. The air bites at his skin. A guardian spirit who walks tilts his head trees at night, looking up, protecting the stars lost low and bright. Others scattered like sparks across the sky. A restless ghost. He's always found peace in these moments after his roar echoing when the world is still. It depends when the noise in his head has finally burned out. When the fires burn low and the wind rattles the door, he walks to the edge of the village closer to their parents and asks for the story. The water is calm now. Tell us about the bear man. They whisper. We can see his reflection again. So the story begins. This time not with war, the same broad shoulders, but with the sound of the same scars, always the same eyes. They speak of a man who lived long ago. Before the white Christ came, dips his hand before iron rusted and ships freeze soft with rot. But it wakes him up. He was strong. He lets the cold soak into his bones. Kind. It's grounding. He carried something wild behind him. Footsteps crunch on the frost. Or men. He turns his head. When the village was in danger, it's the young warrior from before the rise, not to destroy, but to protect. Each boy looks uncertain, their own like he's not sure he should be there. In one version, you didn't come tall as a pine tree. The boy says that shine like moonlight. Bjorn shakes his head. In another, he's small and hunched. The boy hesitates, wearing a bearskin that still breathes. Is it true? Some say that you don't remember ravens when it happens. Others say Bjorn looks out, flying above battlefields. Some of it to guide fallen warriors. Not all. It doesn't really matter which version is true. You know it came. The point isn't accuracy, but not every way is comfort. The boy nods, because in the dark, thoughtful, when the storms howl and the world feels fragile, it helps to believe that somewhere out there, always, an ancient spirit still watches over you. The boy seems to think that gods take hold and new kings rule. I want to be like telling the story. Bjorn finally begins to look at him again. No, when the Christian monks arrive, you don't, carrying books and bells and new ways of thinking, but don't chase the local tales with a mix of fascination, but don't go looking. To them, the boy doesn't Bjorn isn't a spirit. He just nods. He's a pagan respectful. A wild man back toward between man and demon. Bjorn stays by the shore. The bear man becomes a warning. What happens when men surrender? The light comes slow, rage, pale gold, when they live by blood the sea instead of grace. He can see the bodies. They write about him in Latin, stripping away the along the sand, turning him into a lesson instead of a legend. Black wings even fluttering. The story refuses to die. Out in the countryside, death isn't far from churches and kings. It's a part of the rhythm. Still whisper the warriors who fell today. They carve little bare figures tonight and hang them if the gods are kind. Not as the rest will live another day until it's their turn. They tell their children by morning, brave. The villagers are awake again, strong but smoke rises fierce but fires, and children run between softens, laughing. The berserker becomes not a warrior of fury, but a symbol of balance. The meeting of strength and mercy. Bjorn helps with the quiet work. The cleaning, the sagas that survive, the burying by poets. He doesn't long after the old days faded. People nod to him. You can still find traces of that idea. For them, the berserker is both terrifying and noble. Proof that men can turn into monsters of extremes. Come home. They rage for their dead is laid to rest. Weep for their he stands beside the mound. They kill, but also protect. Someone mutters a prayer to Odin. Even in their roughness, understood that every person their worries away. Wildness inside. That night, the trick is not to destroy it. The aurora dances green and white curtains of light, and that idea above the quiet thread of everyone steps stretches far beyond the Viking age. Bjorn, when later generations look back at the old sagas, scholars and poets try to understand. He remembers his father's voice. Some think it was purely psychological, telling him stories when he was adrenaline. Stories about others insist there was magic strength of beasts, who felt the pulse of the gods in their hidden doors in the mind. He used to think they were just tales. Until one day, he realized he'd become one. He doesn't feel pride when the world just understanding. When a man who spent his life enduring hunger, he only carries it for a while. Finally reaches when the lights fade from the sky, instead of breaking, stretching his sore shoulders, there's something strangely relatable about that. The fire is low, because who hasn't felt it? He lies down surge of energy pulling your furs close. That moment where fear flips into something fierce softly. It's not just about battle, it's survival. Tomorrow, it's life refusing to bow. Maybe that's why, thousands of years later, the image of the berserker still lingers. Ordinary things in stories, until the next time the horn sounds, in movies, until the way we talk about the bear who seem unstoppable. For now, though, he went berserk, we say, not realizing that somewhere far off carries the raven takes flight into the dark. It once meant its wings whispering, a man wrapped in animal skin and divine fury. Now, it just means someone who's lost control. But beneath the slang, the old meaning still hums quietly, like an echo through time. That's the thing about myths, they never really vanish. They just evolve. Sometimes they shrink into bedtime stories. Other times, they flare up again when the world feels uncertain. As if people instinctively reach back towards something older, something that once made sense. In modern Scandinavia, deep in the forests and along the fjords, there are still places named after the bearmen, Bjorn, Berserker, small reminders carved into the landscape, whispering of a time when humans and nature weren't so separate. And sometimes, if you walk through those woods at night, you can almost believe the old legends again. The sound of a branch snapping behind you might be a deer roar, maybe something else. Maybe the air just shifted, the way it does when someone unseen is watching. If you stop and listen long enough, you might hear the faint crunch of heavy footsteps moving through the moss. There's a comfort in that thought, that even though the world has changed, the wildness never really left. It just learned to hide better, because maybe Bjorn never disappeared. Maybe he became the forest itself, the rustle in the branches, the deep silence between trees, the pulse of life beneath the soil. Maybe he's what keeps the balance, unseen but always there, reminding us that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply endures. And somewhere, in a quiet valley that no one visits anymore, there's still an old mound covered in heather. Beneath it, a few stones, a few bones, and a half-rotted bearskin. The wind passes over it softly, carrying with it the scent of salt and pine. The locals don't go there much. They say the place has a feeling, not bad, not good, just ancient, as if the earth remembers. Every spring, when the snow melts, the flowers grow brighter there than anywhere else. People notice, shrug, and move on. But once in a while, an old fisherman or traveler will stop, bow his head, and whisper a quiet thank you before continuing on his way. No one really knows why, but it feels right. And so the legend lives on, not as a story of war or madness, but as something gentler, something that hums in the bones of the land, in the blood of its people, in the quiet moments before sleep when imagination drifts toward older, stranger things. Because history, when told softly enough, becomes something else. It becomes a lullaby, and the Berserker, once the fiercest of all, becomes just another dream to keep the dark away. The firelight dances low in the longhouse, painting slow, flickering shapes on the timbered walls. The sound of the wind outside has quieted, and inside, only the soft crackle of wood remains. The storyteller's voice drops to a whisper now, the way voices do when they've reached the end of a tale that feels too old and too true to speak loudly. And that's why, he says, stirring the embers with a stick, you never walk through the woods at dusk without greeting the trees, because you never know when the bear man might be listening. The children giggle nervously. One hides behind a wool blanket, another pretends not to care but keeps glancing toward the door. The adults smile faintly. It's not that they believe every word, but it's comforting, somehow, to live in a world that still has mysteries. Outside, the northern sky stretches wide and dark, a velvet blanket scattered with stars. Somewhere far away, the sea murmurs against the rocks. It's the same sea Bjorn once listened to, the same rhythm that marked his days. Time changes faces and names, but not the sound of the waves. And in that steady hush, the line between history and dream blurs completely. If you were to walk through that village now, hundreds of years later, you'd find nothing but ruins and wind. The longhouses have fallen, their wooden ribs scattered like the bones of old ships. The earth has reclaimed what was once human, as it always does. But if you stood still, very still, and closed your eyes, you might hear something faint beneath the rustle of grass, a rhythm, slow and deep, like the heartbeat of the land itself. That's where the Berserker lives now, not in flesh, not in story, but in the silence between sounds. The Vikings believed the world was full of layers, visible and invisible, the seen and the unseen. They called it the 9 realms, Asgard, Midgard, Jotunheim, and the others, each one connected by Yggdrasil, the great world tree that tied everything together. The Berserker belonged somewhere in between those realms, not entirely human, not entirely myth. He was the thin place between worlds, where chaos met calm, where the wild heart of the forest brushed against the fragile order of mankind. And maybe that's why their story still whispers to us. Because somewhere, deep down, everyone understands that balance, the tug between who we are and what we could become, between control and surrender, between the steady beat of a human heart and the wild call of something older. In the soft light of dawn, the villagers once believed they could see spirits moving along the mist. Not ghosts exactly, but memories with shape, echoes of what the world had been. Maybe the Berserkers were just that, echoes. Men who, for a moment, remembered the way the world used to be when man and beast weren't so far apart. Back then, survival demanded a kind of closeness to nature that most people today have forgotten. Every sound in the forest mattered. Every gust of wind meant something. The land wasn't just scenery, it was alive, and it watched you back. The Berserker didn't fight against nature. He fought through it, letting its wildness fill him, lending him the strength he needed to face the impossible. And after the fury passed, when he finally laid down his axe, he wasn't ashamed of that wildness. He thanked it. He knew it was part of him. That's something the Vikings understood in a way we often don't. They didn't see rage as evil. They saw it as dangerous, yes, like fire, but also sacred. Fire can destroy a hall, but it can also keep you alive through the coldest night. The trick, as always, is knowing when to let it burn. In the sagas, Odin himself embodies that balance. The one-eyed god of war and wisdom, cunning, unpredictable, both terrifying and tender. He seeks knowledge even when it costs him pain. He sacrifices not just blood, but comfort, safety, peace, all for understanding. The Berserker followed in that spirit. His fury wasn't mindless, it was a kind of offering, a reminder that power, in its purest form, demands surrender. And when the battle was done, when the noise faded and the world went still again, the Berserker would often collapse, drained, shaking, empty, because all that wildness has a price. The Norse called it the Berserksganga, the Berserker's trance. Afterward, some would sleep for days, others would wander, dazed, unable to remember what they'd done. It was said that their souls had stepped outside their bodies for a while, running with wolves, roaring with bears, fighting alongside gods, and when they returned, it took time to settle back into human form. Some never fully did, but even that had a strange peace to it, because in their culture, to touch the divine even for a moment was worth any cost. And maybe that's what the story of Bjorn is really about. Not rage, not war, but connection. The way a person can bridge the gap between the ordinary and the extraordinary, between the hearth and the storm. Over time, the Berserker's story became softer. Yes, but its core stayed the same. Strength, courage, wildness, balance. The reminder that inside every human heart there's a small, sleeping bear, and it's not something to fear, but to respect. The storytellers who came after wove that lesson into lullabies and poems. They sang of the bear who guards the north wind, who walks beside lonely travelers and roars at the spirits that mean them harm. They sang of Bjorn the protector, not Bjorn the destroyer. And maybe, on some level, that's what Bjorn would have wanted. Because for all the blood and battle, his story ends not with violence, but with rest. A long sleep beneath the earth, a peace he earned. In the far north, where the nights last half the year, the people still tell his story when winter closes in. They light fires, pour mead, and speak of him not as a monster, not as a saint, but as something in between, something very human. The world outside might be cold and endless, but in those stories, there's warmth. And when the last ember fades, when everyone drifts into dreams, the bear man walks again, not through battlefields, but through the quiet landscapes of sleep. There, he's not roaring, he's resting, watching, keeping the dark at bay. If you close your eyes now, you can almost see him. The outline of a great shape moving slowly through the mist, fur glistening with frost, eyes soft and knowing. The kind of presence that doesn't need to be feared, only remembered. He stops by the shore, where the waves hum their ancient song, and he listens, the same way he always has. Because the sea never forgets, and neither do stories. The sound of the sea drifts softly through the mist. It's steady, patient, eternal, the same rhythm that has lulled men to sleep for 1,000 years. It presses against the shore like a slow heartbeat, whispering stories to the sand. Somewhere in that rhythm, you can still feel the shape of the old world. A world of longships and fjords, of men who read the wind like scripture and women who wove fate into cloth. A world that lived between quiet and chaos. The Berserker was part of that balance, a reminder that even the fiercest storm can belong to a peaceful sky. When people speak of Vikings now, they usually picture helmets and axes, ships with dragon heads cutting through the waves. But those were just details, just tools. The truth of their lives was simpler and stranger, full of long winters, smoky halls, laughter, superstition, fear, and faith, all tangled together. They lived close to the edge of the world, where every day felt borrowed from the gods. And in that fragile space, they learned to make stories strong enough to last when everything else faded. The Berserker was one of those stories. Maybe it started with men like Bjorn, real people who lived, worked, and fought, who felt something larger stirring inside them. Maybe, over time, the world turned that feeling into a myth so it wouldn't be forgotten. And maybe that's what all myths are, memory, trying to survive the cold. There's a certain quiet wisdom in how the old tales soften over time. The sharpness dulls, the fury fades, and what's left behind is the heartbeat, the part that still means something. That's how stories survive winter. The Berserker who once terrified villages and enemies alike becomes, centuries later, a bedtime companion, a guardian in the dark. His rage becomes warmth, his roar becomes a hum, and the same story that once warned of danger now promises protection. It's strange, isn't it? The way fear can turn into comfort if you tell it softly enough. The Vikings understood that too, in their own way. They didn't just tell stories to explain the world, they told them to make peace with it, to make sense of storms, of loss, of the unknowable. And so the Berserker, once a symbol of chaos, becomes a symbol of connection between men and gods, beasts and humans, past and present. When you listen closely to those old sagas, you can hear the layers. Under the roar and clatter, there's always quiet, the moment after battle, when the snow starts falling again, when the warriors sit by their fires and stare into the flames, thinking of home. That's the heart of it. That's what lasts. And that's what makes it perfect for nights like this, when the world outside feels far away, and your mind drifts through half-dreams of ancient times. Picture it now, a cold fjord, the moon hanging low over black water. A man sitting by a small fire, wrapped in a bearskin, eyes closed, listening to the distant call of the sea. He's not fighting, not hunting, not speaking, just breathing. The same air you're breathing now. The same stars above him still burn above you. The same wind that brushed his face still whispers through trees somewhere. The same world, quieter now, but not so different. He was called a berserker once, a warrior of rage. But tonight, he's just a man. A flicker of warmth in the cold. He leans back, feels the weight of the day slide off his shoulders, and lets himself rest. The fire crackles, the waves sigh, and the night folds around him like a blanket. And somewhere, in that silence, he smiles. Because he knows the bear inside him isn't something to fear. It's just another heartbeat, slow, steady, ancient, the part of him that belongs to the earth. You can almost imagine the soft sound of the ocean turning into a breath, rising and falling like sleep. That's how these stories work. They start loud, full of war and fire, but they always end quietly, as if they were never really about battle at all. They're about peace, about the moment after, about the stillness that waits patiently once the world stops shouting. If you listen to enough Viking tales, you start to notice that pattern. Every saga, no matter how bloody, eventually comes back to the same place: the hearth, the home, the quiet. Even the gods themselves long for rest in the end. The berserker's rage may burn bright, but it always fades into something softer, a kind of surrender, a kind of peace that doesn't come from victory, but from understanding. And that's the beauty of it. Because maybe the story of Bjorn isn't really about how he fought. Maybe it's about how he stopped. How he learned that strength isn't only in fury, but in gentleness. That the wild heart of the bear and the quiet heart of a man can live side by side. It's not a story of conquest. It's a story of balance. And balance is the closest thing to peace there is. So when you hear the word berserk now, when it's tossed around to mean madness or loss of control, remember that it once meant something deeper. It meant courage. It meant surrendering to the wildness that lives in all things, trusting it, riding it, and then letting it go. The Vikings didn't fear that wildness. They called it divine. Maybe we should too, because there's something healing about it, something grounding. It reminds us that, underneath everything, we're still part of the same old earth, still animals with stories, still creatures of breath and bone, still capable of wonder. And if you sit quietly enough, the way Bjorn once did, you might feel that same hum rising in your chest, that steady, timeless rhythm that connects you to the wind, the fire, the sea. It's not anger, it's not madness, it's life, pure and unbroken. The kind that hums beneath history, beneath sleep, beneath the long drift of time. And as you lie there, listening, maybe you can feel it now, that deep calm that comes when you stop fighting and just let the story wash over you. The world outside fades, the fire dims, the sea keeps whispering, as it always has. And somewhere, far away, the bear man walks the shore, keeping watch over dreams, not roaring, not fighting, just there, quiet, patient, eternal, like the sea, like the story, like sleep. The sea is still whispering. It always is. If you listen long enough, you can start to imagine that every wave carries a memory, the echo of oars dipping, of voices singing through fog, of wooden hulls creaking as they move across cold northern water. Some of those voices belonged to warriors, some to traders, some to farmers, fishermen, lovers, dreamers, all of them gone now, but somehow still here, folded into the rhythm of the tide, like verses in an endless song. And maybe, somewhere among those whispers, there's still one that belongs to Bjorn. He wouldn't say much, if he could speak again. He never was a man of many words. He might only smile and say something simple, like, "The world is quieter now." Then he'd turn, watch the horizon for a while, and fade back into the mist. That's how the old world feels when you try to touch it, close enough to see, but just out of reach, like a dream that lingers for a moment after waking, soft around the edges. The Vikings understood that kind of distance. They knew that memory was slippery, that even the strongest names eventually turned to dust. That's why they carved their stories in runes and sang them by firelight, not to be remembered perfectly, but to keep the spirit alive. And maybe that's what we're doing right now, too. Retelling an old story, letting it drift gently through time, not shouting it, not analyzing it, just letting it breathe, because that's how history should sound sometimes. Not like a lecture, like a lullaby. The tale of the berserker doesn't end with battle or blood or glory. It ends right here, in this quiet moment, where the waves meet the dark, and where myth curls up beside you like an old animal finally finding rest. The people who once feared him now speak of him with fondness. They say his spirit protects the forests, guards the northern lights, walks beside travelers who have lost their way. Some even say that on the coldest nights, when the snow swirls thick and the wind howls like wolves, a warm shape can be seen moving through the storm. Slow, massive, golden brown. It never comes close, never harms, just passes by, like the earth itself stretching in its sleep. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's him. The world has changed, of course. The longships have vanished, replaced by steel and smoke and light. The sagas live now in books and screens, instead of in firelit halls. But the heart of them, that steady, human heartbeat, it's still there. Because no matter how modern we become, there's always a part of us that misses the wild. It's why we walk into forests and feel calmer. Why the crash of the ocean feels like music. Why the night sky, when it's clear, can make us go silent. That's the same silence the berserkers once listened to. The same hush before a storm. The same pulse of something vast and mysterious that sits just beneath the noise of everyday life. They didn't have words for it then, and we barely do now, but it's still there. It's always been there. And maybe that's why their stories never truly faded. Because they weren't just about gods and battles, they were about us. About the part of being human that's untamed and kind and ancient all at once. The berserker just wore it on his skin. He reminded people that they were part of something bigger, that strength wasn't found in armor or weapons, but in surrendering to life itself. That kind of lesson never gets old. It just changes shape. Today, it might not be an axe or a roar or a battle. It might be something smaller, holding on through a hard day, finding patience when the world feels too loud, protecting someone you love. The berserker's courage doesn't belong to war anymore. It belongs to endurance. And in that way, he's still walking among us. Just quieter now. If you think about it, stories like his are just mirrors. When you look at them closely, you don't really see the past. You see yourself, reflected in the dim light of memory. You see your own wildness, your own calm, your own longing for meaning. That's what makes history so strange and comforting. It's not just about what happened. It's about what keeps happening, over and over, inside us. So even now, when you hear the word Viking, maybe you can think beyond the battles and helmets. Think of the silence after the fight. Think of the man sitting by his fire, watching the snow fall, thinking of home. That's who Bjorn was in the end. Not a monster, not a hero, just a person trying to find peace in a world that rarely allowed it. And maybe that's why his story still matters. Because we're all doing the same thing. Trying to be strong, trying to be gentle, trying to find a balance between the two. In the soft light of memory, you can picture him one last time, sitting on a rocky shore, the dawn just starting to break, pale gold spilling over the waves. His axe rests beside him, forgotten. The air smells of salt and pine. He looks out over the water and breathes in deeply, as if the whole world is exhaling with him. And then, slowly, the scene fades. The mist thickens. The world grows quiet. The sea hums its endless song. The bear sleeps again. And the story settles into silence. A silence that feels like warmth, like safety, like the edge of a dream you don't want to end. So if you're still awake, listening to the echo of that world, the creak of ships, the whisper of wind through pine, the low hum of waves, let it fade now. Let it turn into something softer. The berserker has found his rest. And maybe, for tonight, you can too. The sea keeps whispering, and the story keeps breathing, both eternal, both at peace. The waves roll in and out, whispering through the dark like they've always done. It's easy to forget how long the sea has been here, how many lifetimes it has watched drift by. Every age leaves its footprints along the shore, and then the tide smooths them away again, patient and kind. Somewhere beneath those waves, the old world still sleeps. The bones of ships, the shadows of warriors, the songs that once filled longhouses, all folded neatly into the deep, not lost, just resting. The ocean keeps them safe. It remembers every story, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. You can imagine it now, the sea floor like a vast library, filled with the fragments of old lives. A comb made from bone, a coin dulled by centuries, the splintered edge of an axe, and maybe, somewhere, the worn clasp of Bjorn's bearskin cloak, lying still under layers of sand and time. There's something comforting about that thought, that nothing truly disappears. It just changes form. The berserker who once walked the earth becomes part of it again. His breath becomes the wind that moves through the fjords. His heartbeat becomes the pulse of the waves. His voice, if you listen closely enough, becomes the hush of the sea at night. And that's how the Vikings saw death, not as an ending, but as a return. They believed that everything circles back, that every soul eventually finds its way home, even if it has to wander through the storm first. That belief made their world feel whole. To them, life was a circle. The seasons turned, the crops grew and died, the sun sank and rose again, and through it all, the gods watched with patient eyes. The Berserker, wild as he was, belonged to that same cycle. His fury wasn't chaos, it was part of nature's rhythm. The storm that breaks so the air can clear, the fire that burns so the forest can regrow. Even rage had a place in the order of things. And that's something we forget, sometimes, that even our roughest edges serve a purpose, that every feeling, no matter how fierce, is part of what makes us alive. The Vikings knew how to honor that. They didn't run from the wildness inside them, they danced with it. They built rituals and myths around it, giving it a shape, a name, a meaning. That's what stories do. They give chaos a face we can recognize. They turn fear into something we can sit beside. And so, the Berserker's tale isn't really one of destruction. It's one of harmony, a reminder that the beast and the man, the storm and the calm, are all one thing. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel that balance. The heavy calm of the bear's breath, the steady rhythm of the waves, the quiet strength of the earth, holding everything in place. It's all connected, and it's all still here. The world may have changed, but the old rhythms are still beneath it, waiting. The hum of engines on a road at night, not so different from the low song of the sea. The flicker of streetlights, not so different from firelight on the walls of a longhouse. The stories we tell each other before bed, not so different from the sagas whispered under the northern stars. The forms change, but the feeling remains. And maybe that's why this story still finds its way to you, here, now. Because it never really ended. Somewhere the Berserker's spirit still stirs, not in battlefields, but in quiet moments, in courage that doesn't shout, in strength that doesn't need to be seen, in the wild calm that lives deep inside every heartbeat. That's what makes the old myths so gentle when you tell them slowly. They stop feeling distant or strange. They start to feel familiar, like something you've always known but forgotten how to name. That's the magic of it. History isn't just what happened, it's what still happens, in us, through us, every day. The same stories, retold in new voices. And tonight, yours has joined them. Because when you listen to something old with your full attention, you give it life again. You become part of the chain, a link between the firelight of the past and the soft glow of the present. So maybe, as you listen to the sea in your mind and feel your breath slow, you can imagine a quiet circle of people long ago, sitting close around the fire. Someone's voice is low, almost a whisper. The air smells of wood smoke and pine. Sparks drift upward into the dark. They're listening to the same story, the same silence between the words. And for a moment, time folds in on itself, like waves meeting in the middle of the sea. The centuries blur. You and they are the same, sitting together in the glow, sharing the warmth of a story. Outside, the night is endless, but inside, it feels safe. That's what stories are for, to keep the dark at a distance, not by fighting it, but by filling it with light. And now the light is soft, dimming, fading into the rhythm of sleep. The fire is low, the sea is calm, the world is quiet. Everything has found its place again. And in that stillness, you can almost hear it, a deep, slow breath, like the earth itself dreaming. That's where the story rests now, not in words, not in books, but in that space between heartbeats, where everything, for just a moment, is perfectly still, perfectly at peace. The world is quiet now, so quiet that you can almost hear the snow falling, not as sound, but as feeling, a hush that settles on everything. The fire has burned low, but its glow still lingers, a faint orange heartbeat in the dark. The smell of smoke and pine is soft in the air. The longhouse walls creak gently as the night wind brushes against them. If you were to step inside, you'd find everyone asleep. The warriors who sang earlier have drifted into dreams. The old woman who told the tale has curled up under a blanket of wool. Even the hounds, once restless near the hearth, have stretched out and grown still. Only the embers stay awake, tiny suns, glowing quietly, watching over the room. In one corner, Bjorn's bearskin lies folded beside his bed. It looks heavy, even at rest, thick, warm, and faintly golden in the firelight. The kind of thing that carries its own history. You can almost imagine it breathing. Bjorn lies nearby, his chest rising and falling slowly. His hand rests open on the blanket, as if he's letting go of something invisible. His face, once fierce, is soft now, the tension melted away. The man who once roared like a storm, now sleeps like the sea after the tide has turned. Outside, the world continues, the stars turning in their endless circle. The frost painting silver across the ground, the forest whispering softly in the distance. Everything moves, but gently. You can almost feel it, the whole world breathing in rhythm. And somewhere in that rhythm, the story keeps going, even without words. Because stories don't end when we stop telling them. They keep echoing, quietly, in the spaces between things. In the hush of snow, in the murmur of waves, in the calm between heartbeats. That's where they live. And that's where Bjorn's story rests now. Not gone, just sleeping, waiting for someone to remember it again. Hundreds of winters from now. It's strange to think how many stories sleep like that, buried under time. Lives that once burned bright, now soft and half forgotten. And yet, all it takes is one voice, one curious person, one quiet night, to bring them back. That's what you're doing right now. You're waking up a story. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the calm, steady way the Vikings would have understood. The way a fire wakes slowly, ember by ember. You're part of that same ancient circle of listeners, sitting quietly at the edge of the dark, keeping watch while the old tales drift through the air. There's comfort in that. It means the past isn't gone, it's still here, sitting beside you, whispering softly. If you listen carefully, you might hear it. The sound of oars dipping into black water, the creak of ropes, the call of seabirds drifting over the fjord, and beneath it all, the deep hum of the sea, the same song that lulled warriors to sleep 1,000 years ago. Maybe you can hear Bjorn's breath among them, slow and even. Maybe you can feel his calm settling over the world. He's not the monster of the old stories anymore. He's not the terror that made enemies tremble. He's just part of the peace now, part of the long, steady rhythm of nature itself. And in a way, that's the gentlest ending he could have asked for. Because even for the fiercest souls, peace is the final home. The Vikings had a word for that kind of peace, freer. It didn't just mean the absence of war, it meant harmony, a kind of quiet order between people, the land, and the gods. That's what Bjorn has found now. His rage has melted into stillness, his strength has turned into warmth, his story has become a whisper, soft, endless, and kind, and as the night deepens, that whisper seems to spread. It moves through the longhouse, through the forest, across the frozen fields, all the way to the sea. Even the waves grow softer, their edges blurred by frost and moonlight. It's as if the whole world is listening. The gods, too, are quiet tonight. Odin's ravens sleep on their perch, Thor's hammer rests, Freya's cats curl close to her side. Even the halls of Valhalla, filled with eternal song, seem to hold their breath. Because sometimes, even the gods pause to listen, not to battle cries, not to prayers, but to silence. The deep, gentle silence that holds everything together. The same silence that hums beneath your own heartbeat. If you let yourself drift with it, you might feel the edges of your thoughts soften. The noise of the day fading, like snow melting into a stream. You can let it all go now. The names, the years, the places, they'll still be there when you wake. For now, there's just the sea, and the breath of a sleeping world. And maybe, somewhere out there, a bear walking through the mist. Slow, steady, peaceful, not hunting, not fighting, just existing. A reminder that strength doesn't have to roar. Sometimes, it just breathes quietly in the dark. The sound of that breath blends with the rhythm of the waves, and slowly, the two become one. Wave, breath, 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 the same motion, the same music. And in that rhythm, time disappears. The centuries slip away, leaving only stillness, the kind that feels endless, the kind that feels like rest. You don't have to imagine anything anymore. You can just listen. The story is finished, but it's still alive, circling like the tide. And as you drift with it, you realize something simple, that history, at its heart, is just memory trying to find peace. And maybe, so are we. The night has grown heavier, but softer too. The air feels thick with calm, the kind that comes after snow when every sound is wrapped in silence. Somewhere far beyond the fjord, the first pale shimmer of dawn waits, not yet ready to rise. The world holds its breath between night and morning, caught in that tender pause where time almost forgets to move. That's where the story lingers now, in that space where everything slows down. You can almost see it. The longhouse, half buried in frost, a thin curl of smoke still rising from the roof hole, the faint orange glow of dying embers barely lighting the beams, the smell of pine, salt, and ash woven together, the perfume of a world long gone but never forgotten. Inside, Bjorn still sleeps, his breath steady, slow, deep, the sound of someone who no longer dreams of war. His hand twitches once, faintly, maybe chasing a memory, or saying goodbye to it. He's home now, not in any one place, but in the feeling of belonging to the earth again. The floor beneath him hums with warmth, the warmth of the fire that was, and of the lives that shared it. The walls hold the faint marks of years, scratches from tools, handprints from children, the wear of seasons, all of it part of the same quiet story. This is what peace looks like, if you could see it, not bright, not grand, just gentle, a stillness that has learned how to breathe. Outside, the frost glitters faintly under the moon. The mountains sleep like giants under their white cloaks. The forest is motionless, its branches heavy with snow, but every so often, a small sound stirs, a fox padding through the drifts, the crack of distant ice. The sound travels softly across the fjord, where the water lies black and still, reflecting the stars. You can almost see your reflection there, too, not clear, but shimmering, fading in and out with the ripples, as if you, too, are part of the story now. And in a way, you are, because every listener becomes a keeper. Every time someone hears a story like this and breathes with it, it comes alive again, just a little. The world remembers itself. It's strange how the smallest things survive longest. A rhythm, a word, a breath. Even after centuries of silence, they can still return, carried by the softest voice. That's what you're hearing now, not just a story, but the echo of one. A memory of a memory, softened by time, shaped by sleep. The Vikings had a word for memory. To Minnie, it meant more than just remembering. It meant keeping something alive inside you, a living memory, a fire that keeps burning quietly, no matter how cold the night gets. Bjorn's story is a Minnie now, a gentle flame, tucked away somewhere deep. And if you're listening this closely, if you've followed his footsteps this far through the dark, then you're retending that flame, keeping it warm for another generation. Maybe that's what the Berserker's journey was always meant to be, not about rage or war or death, but about finding the quiet center at the end of it all, the place where even fire learns to rest. If you sit with that thought for a moment, you can feel something shift. The air grows softer, the edges of things blur. The story begins to dissolve into its surroundings, into the slow pulse of the sea, the hush of the snow, the rhythm of your breath, because stories don't really end. They just melt into the world again, waiting for the next voice, the next night, the next bit of quiet. You can almost hear the first bird stirring in the distance, faint, hesitant, the earliest sign that morning is near. But even morning doesn't want to hurry. It waits politely, as if it knows that this silence deserves to last a little longer. Bjorn shifts once in his sleep, and then stills again. His bare skin rises and falls with his breath. A thin beam of dawn creeps through the cracks in the wall and rests across his hand, pale, gold, and soft. If you looked closely, you might swear that his fingers curled just slightly, as if to hold the light, and then he lets it go. Outside, the frost begins to steam faintly in the early warmth. The fjord sighs as its edges thaw. The world begins to wake, but inside, the longhouse stays quiet, as if time itself has decided to give Bjorn one more hour of sleep. Because even the fiercest souls deserve their rest. The legends will remember his rage, the poets will sing of his battles, but the earth, the true witness, will remember this, the stillness, the peace, the slow breath of a man who finally found calm after a lifetime of storms. And in the end, that's all any of us can hope for. Not fame, not glory, just peace, a place to rest, a story that ends in quiet. So, let the sea hold the rest now. Let the mountains keep the echoes. Let the dawn take what remains of the night. And as the light spreads gently across the fjord, as it touches the old longhouse, as it moves across sleeping faces and drifting snow, the story exhales one last time, a long, slow sigh of contentment. Because that's what all stories want, really. Not applause, not endings, just a rest. And so, the tale of the berserker fades into morning, leaving behind nothing but calm, and the faint warmth of a fire that once burned bright. The sea glimmers, the air hums, the earth breathes, and somewhere, deep beneath it all, the bear sleeps on. The light is soft now, not bright, not harsh, just the quiet gold of a northern morning, spreading slowly across the horizon. It touches the tops of the pines first, then the frozen grass, then the roof of the longhouse, where frost melts and drips in tiny silver threads. Inside, the warmth of the night still lingers. The last breath of the fire sighs into smoke and disappears. The air is heavy with the smell of wood and wool, and something else, something faint, ancient, almost like memory. Bjorn still sleeps. The world has begun to turn again, but he stays in that soft space between dream and waking, a place where time doesn't press, where thoughts dissolve before they can form. You can imagine his dream, if you like. He's walking through a forest, not as a warrior, not as a beast, but simply as a man. The trees are tall and silver gray, their branches heavy with morning mist. Every step he takes leaves no mark, as if the earth itself wants to stay undisturbed. Somewhere ahead, he can hear water, a river, maybe, or the sea again. Its sound is slow, deep, endless. The same sound that's been following him all his life. He keeps walking, his breath matching the rhythm of the waves. The mist thins, the light grows warmer, and then, for the first time, he feels it: complete stillness. Not the pause before battle, not the exhaustion after, just stillness for its own sake. The river widens before him, stretching out to a horizon made of light. He kneels at its edge, cups the water in his hands, and lets it run through his fingers. It's cold, but not cruel, clean, alive. He looks down and sees his reflection. Not wild, not fierce, but calm, human. He smiles, and the river smiles back. That's when he understands that he's home. Not Valhalla, not Midgard, not any hall built of stone or gold. Just this, the space between breath and silence, where everything is both awake and asleep. He sets his axe down beside him. He doesn't need it anymore. The bear inside him is quiet, purring softly like a memory that's finally been understood. And as the light brightens, he lies down by the water's edge. The sound of the waves folds over him. The mist thickens again, gently wrapping him like a blanket. And the dream fades, slowly, peacefully, until there's nothing left but the sound of the river, the same low hum that's always been there, waiting. It's the sound of the world breathing. And maybe, if you listen closely, you can hear it now too. Steady, patient, endless. That same rhythm moves through everything, through the sea, through the wind, through the earth, through you. You are part of it too. The same ancient pulse that once guided the oars of Viking ships, that once thundered in the chest of a berserker, that once rolled across the northern sky. It's still here, gentle now, a quiet reminder that you are made of the same story. You don't have to hold on to the details anymore. The names, the battles, the long winters. You can let them drift away, like ash into water. What remains is the feeling, the calm after the storm, the peace that follows the noise. That's what this story always was about. Not fury, not fire, peace. The kind that doesn't have to be earned or proven. The kind that's already there, waiting to be remembered. And now, as the world outside grows lighter, your own breath matches its rhythm, slow, deep, steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth, wave, breath, the same motion, the same peace. If there's still a bit of tension left in your body, you can let it go now. Let your shoulders sink, let your hands loosen, let your jaw unclench, let your mind soften around the edges. You don't have to think anymore. You don't have to follow the story. It's done its work. All you need to do is drift, like the tide, like the mist, like Bjorn's final breath in the dawn light. Somewhere far away, the sea glimmers, the waves move slowly, patient as time. The world hums its ancient song, the same one that's been echoing since the first heartbeat. You can rest in that sound now. It's safe, it's endless, it's home. The story fades completely into sea spray, into sky, into sleep. No battles, no endings, just stillness, just breath, the kind that feels like forever. And as the final light touches the horizon, you can almost hear the faintest whisper, a voice older than memory, softer than the wind. Rest now. You've carried the fire far enough. The story will keep burning. Sleep. And with that, everything falls silent. The sea rests. The mountains dream. The world turns quietly beneath the stars. And Bjorn the berserker, the bear, the man sleeps on, at peace. At last,